Welcome to the Masterclass 2, Redesigning or Re-strategizing Education Projects for Better Impacts by MICA CDMC. I am Aanchal and I work as a research associate at CSRBOX. CDMC strives to meet current demands of social development systems by redesigning innovative solutions and best practices driven by research and grounded in socio-cultural and economic realities. Before we begin today's session, we have a few instructions for the participants. Since we are using a virtual platform, you may experience a time lag. To avoid disturbance, keep your microphone on mute and video off unless you are asked to speak. In case you get logged out of the meeting due to technical issue, you can use the same link to log in again. Please use the chat box to share any questions, comments, suggestions for our speakers. We will take up questions at the end of the session. Your questions will help us in making the session more interactive and fruitful. Today's discussion will be around ways to structure existing projects for better output, learning through case analysis from the experts, and improving the organization's capacity building through strategy design. We are very honored to have with us 3 facilitators to lead this masterclass. I would like to introduce them, starting with Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat, Chair CDMC MICA. Professor Manisha's special interests are young people's media cultures, new media, civic engagement, trans-cultural citizenship, media literacy, and gender. With a PhD in mass communication from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA, and in education from the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, India, she has taught and worked as a media consultant, trainer, and researcher in India, Thailand, and the US. At present, she is leading the UNICEF MICA partnership and the India component of the Global Kids online study initiated by the UNICEF Office of Research and the London School of Economics. Welcome, Manisha.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Professor Ruchi Tewari from CDMC MICA. With 20 years of teaching experience, Dr. Tewari's professional focus is in the applied areas of communication, where she specializes in strategic CSR, its design, implementation, and reporting. She has also researched and published in the domain of technology-aided human communication and has conducted over 1,000 hours of corporate training to mid-level managers of national and international organizations. Thank you for joining us today, Ruchi. Next up, we have Ms. Sushama Oza, Advisor, CDMC MICA, who is Director, Strategy and Sustainability at Adani Foundation, India, and spearheads strategy for the CSR projects of the Adani conglomerate at multiple sites across 12 states in core sectors, community health, and sustainable livelihood development. She started her career at Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda as a research and teaching assistant and has extensive experience working with different organizations, including the California Rehabilitation Center, California, USA. Welcome, Manisha. Before we begin the session, I would like to remind the speakers and the audience that the session ends at 3:25 p.m. and a buzzer will go off 5 minutes before the session ends. We shall keep the last 15 minutes for the questions posted by the participants in the chat box. I again thank all the speakers for joining us today and hand over the session to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we start, I'd also like to introduce our colleague, Shrishti Govilkar. Shrishti's assisted us throughout and she's here as well. Welcome, Shrishti.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, professors, as well as the attendees for having us over this Edu Summit. I hope it's an enriching session for everybody.
Thanks, Shrishti. Can we quickly get started?
Yes.
So what we have today is Manisha, Sushama and I, we sat together and we created this little framework around which we could talk. We had very little time, but we've tried to put in a little bit of theoretical background and then move on to actual case that has been done. Again, to pull out some theoretical conceptual understanding and then leave it open to the house for questions and answers. So a couple of words that we picked up were strategizing and therefore re-strategizing, role of planning and therefore replanning, and we were looking at education as a domain generally which has been worked upon with not-for-profit and of course a couple of corporates as well as a part of their CSR extension. So picking these pillars up, we thought that let's understand NGO and strategy as two terms. How well do they go together? And when we are talking of re-strategizing, are we at a scope where we've thought of NGOs and strategies? So this is the picture that we got in for you, which talks about an NGO and strategy. Srishti, could we have the visual, please? An NGO and passion is the second view that we had. And this is how an NGO looks vis-a-vis strategy on one arm and passion on one arm. And most distinctly, as I present this to you, my obvious looming question is, which of the two do you relate to? And I'd seek out a couple of inputs in the chat box. If I pose those two pictures to you, which comes to you more naturally? Is it an NGO and strategy, or is it an NGO and passion? If any of you may want to respond to it. So there I have. Sarah, welcome back. We've met in earlier sessions, and yes, most clearly, it is largely NGO and passion. I do see one or two inputs which talks of NGO and strategy, but it is generally NGO and passion. And yes, the very fact that we choose to work in the not-for-profit and in a non-governmental organization, we are looking at a sheer attachment with the civil society that we have, which is ridden and driven by passion. Having said this, Srishti, if we could move on, most clearly here is what it comes. Which and why we go on, it is passion. So therefore, my second question is, so should NGOs have a strategy? And yes, the answer is yes. Srishti, you enter, and like most of you have said, we should have a strategy. We definitely must have a strategy. And if we enter and find this a little further, we'll understand that we're at a crossroad. And we're at a crossroad where we often look at a strategy and a passion as oxymorons which do not go together. And so it is very often understood as an either or choice. But the question is it an either or choice? And picking up from what I have got in the chat inputs, it's not an either or choice. It is a strategy and passion, or let me put it correctly, passion and strategy option that we need to look for. Because very often, a lot of NGOs have fallen apart after a year or two of work because it just doesn't seem to work in place. And so what I thought that it was important for me to define what a strategic plan is. And I'll read this out for you. It says that a strategic plan helps to focus more on important affairs and matters. It gives less attention to insignificant projects and initiatives. It also informs them about specific areas that demand attention. Now, a few keywords that we must necessarily pick up. As an NGO, do I and have I been focusing upon my important affairs constantly while looking at those parts which need attention at a specific period of time? Very, very importantly, attention necessarily at a specific period of time. So most of us in the flow of our activities do happen to get carried away with less important things, on account of which it becomes imperative for us to definitely look at the strategy. And to look at a strategy, we necessarily need to have a strategy. And so one question that I will pose to everybody, and I have about 60, 70 plus participants, how many of you have a strategic plan for your NGO? If we could just take a quick show of hands by you typing a yes, we do in the chat box. I don't see more than 8 to 10 responses. Oh, that's encouraging. Fantastic. Okay. So about 20 of 72 that we have here. And a second and a more important question is, how frequently do we revisit that strategy? The most important and the more important bit is, how frequently do we revisit that strategy? Because to prepare in, okay, Abhishek says every 6 months, annually, but I just see those responses coming in from about 3 to 4 of you. An important and a very necessary aspect of having a strategy is the very fact that it becomes our cornerstone, which we turn back to. Oh, Ambika, fantastic if you're saying once a week. And maybe if not here, then at some other forum, I would definitely like to talk to people who revisit their strategies every month, or like somebody said, every week, because it is them through which we need to pick up and understand the whys of it. And these are the questions that in the Q&A, maybe I will get back to reach out to you and ask, what are the insights that you gather when you revisit your strategy? Yes, Shrishti, could we move a little further, please? And so my question to everyone, what is a strategy, therefore? So we know what is a strategy plan, but what is a strategy? Any inputs? Okay. I'm just picking up keywords, and I get a word as direction, a way forward, planning, a roadmap. I like what Rajat puts in, and he says an insight into the past. And Shramik puts in as very transactional. It's a to-do list. So, well, let me quickly respond to that. It's much beyond a to-do list. Research, analysis, and development, guidelines of how to approach your goal, a blueprint. So the fundamental term there is that it is a goal that you establish and you set out to put in on paper, how do you reach that goal? So is a strategy static? No. A strategy is dynamic. It needs to and it must necessarily be flexible. Can a strategy be flexible? It needs to be flexible. Shrishti, we enter there. And since my intent was clearly to set the ground for you, yes, you use the right term. It needs to respond to the VUCA. That's extremely important, and your strategy becomes your net for your VUCA. The moment there is a lot of instability, and we cannot have a more apt moment than the moment right now to discuss what VUCA is, what strategy is, and how does a strategy act as your safety net to land on softer feet in difficult times. We move on, Shrishti. And here are my inputs to you. And this is something that most of you would have been doing for a while. All I'm doing is I'm summating it all together and putting in as heads for you. And this is what some of you said. You review your strategy at regular goals. The second and the third point is probably something as a to-do for you to get back. Are you able to promote operational and individual flexibility? Can I pick up a human resource and put that human resource into another task where he or she is able to upskill or downskill or reskill my team to make them more adaptable? And second important resource in an organization is its budget. And is my budget dynamic to respond to situations? And in COVID times, we did see a lot of organizations quickly realign their budgets into areas that required an overwhelming need. Why is this important? Just one critical word, and Rajat put it absolutely VUCA, but to pull out jargons, I would say, to respond effectively to the external situation. That is at the core of what a strategy necessarily have. And thus, having built that ground for each one of us, it is a pleasure for me to introduce to all of you Sushama, who's a dear colleague, and she seems to have done all of this overseeing, mentoring, and closely watching one project in the domain of education, which aligned to strategy closely, had all elements of a large project in education, completely rolled out successfully, and also being redesigned and re-strategized based on the need for what there was on the ground. And that's what made her foundation a completely big brand, so to say, because they were able to quickly be quick-footed, agile, and respond well to the situation. I hand it over to you, Sushama, keenly looking forward to the discussion of the project that you have to discuss. Over to you, Sushama.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you, Ruchi, so much. And here I would humbly make one correction, is that Adani Foundation, the way I was introduced, I worked for Adani Foundation and now I'm retired, but I'm an advisor for Adani Group. And I have seen and watched this project that I'm going to share with you so closely. So it's very close to my heart. So I thought that I will use this example to make theory sound little bit more easier to understand. So here I'm going to talk about the project Gyanoday. So may I request Srushti to play that small video, please?
मेरा नाम सादिया नाज है। मैं 10th की छात्रा हूँ। पहले स्कूल में टीचर नहीं थे तो बहुत सारे बच्चे आते थे, बस यूं ही घूम के चले जाते थे, पढ़ाई लिखाई नहीं करते थे, बस बातें करते थे। तो स्कूल आने का मन नहीं करता था, यार क्या करेंगे स्कूल जाके, पढ़ाई होता नहीं है। बट जब हम लोग ने देखा कि इक्वेशन से रिलेटेड कुछ यहाँ पढ़ाई हो रही है तो लोग बच्चे पढ़ने के लिए एक्साइटेड होते हैं कि हाँ चलो कंप्यूटर क्लास जाएंगे, स्मार्ट क्लास जाएंगे, इक्वेशन के बारे में कुछ पढ़ेंगे। तो बहुत सारे बच्चे अब स्कूल भी आती है, पढ़ती है, वो जानने लगे हैं कि कंप्यूटर पे किस तरह पढ़ाई होता है, कंप्यूटर हम लोग किस तरह यूज़ करेंगे। एक पहले बच्चे नहीं जानते थे कंप्यूटर क्या होता है, कैसे इसको यूज़ किया जाता है। बट स्कूल आई, जब स्टार्ट हुआ तो फिर स्कूल आई, देखी, पढ़ी। और अब पहले बच्चे क्या करती थी कि स्कूल में पढ़ाई नहीं होता है तो बहुत ऐसी बच्ची थी कि घर में भी पढ़ाई नहीं करती थी। बट अब जब बताया जाता है कंप्यूटर पे कि द्विघात देती है, वो लोग पढ़ना चाहती है, चलो कुछ तो पढ़ाई हो रहा है ना, चलो स्कूल चलते हैं, कुछ भी पढ़ते हैं इक्वेशन से। और बहुत बच्चे ऐप है उसके घर में भी वो पढ़ाई कर लेते हैं इक्वेशन से देख के। इक्वेशन में बहुत सारे ग्रुप से ज्वाइंट रहते हैं, तो हम अगर किसी क्वेश्चन का आंसर नहीं जानते हैं तो उसमें हम उसको फोटो करके उसमें भेज देंगे, तो वैसे हमारे पास उसका रिप्लाई भी आ जाएगा, उसका आंसर आ जाएगा, तो ऐसे हेल्प होता है। तो जिस चीज़ के बारे में नहीं जानते उसके बारे में पता चल जाता है। तो वही पेरेंट्स भी फिर पेरेंट्स को पता चला कि हाँ कुछ गलत नहीं करते हैं, पढ़ाई करते हैं उससे।
Thank you, Srusti. I used this small video just to introduce Gyanoday, but I'm going to talk to you more on where Gyanoday is being implemented and how. Gyanoday is being implemented at Godda district, and Godda is one of the aspirational districts. And Godda is one of the district, one of the 24 districts of Jharkhand, and Jharkhand was carved out of Bihar in 2000 November. So whether it was in Bihar or Jharkhand, Godda has always remained in last 3-4 in educational performance as far as board results are concerned. So that was one of the area that we wanted to work on, or I would say that Adani Foundation wanted to target, that it needed education upliftment. And the other problems, related problems to that education was that, as that little girl student has shared, that students were not reaching to school. So attendance was barely 20-25%. So then there were two issues. One, teachers were not there. Second, the attendance was not there. Dropout was so high. It was as high as almost 70% to 84%, 84% for, or 88% for SC/ST girls. So very large dropout rate and less interest in the thing, in the education. So there was a need to bring students to school and then make education or syllabus so interesting so that students will stay. And that is how Gyanoday, which is AI-based, smart class-based teaching learning, that was introduced, and within just 2.5 years, it has done wonders. Godda, as I said, that was in last 3-4, so around 20th or 21st rank in entire state. Now it has gone up to 11th rank. So, and the attendance in the class, attendance has improved 200% from just barely 20-25% to 25. And this was possible because, it was not only just giving the master class, but as Ruchi rightly said, strategizing, thinking it through, that what will work in that situation. We have identified the issues, but what will work and what is the final goal that we would like to reach together to make that original issue disappear, but also it's not just reaching the normal, but going further. So that is what was planned with foresight, that what is that we are going to target now and what we will reach at the end of the project phase first, 2 and 3. So that is how it was done. And as I said, that being it very interesting, being it participative, being it teacher and student friendly, we are getting really, really great results. And this year, I'm happy to share that the results that, where they were in last three, the passing percentage has gone up to 75 plus percent. So this is something that Gyanoday could do. And I just cannot emphasize enough one point where I would request Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat to take it forward, is that you cannot do it alone. You need to build partnership. And let's hear from Manisha that how partnerships are imperative in strategizing your project. And then I'll again discuss Gyanoday in with the light of partnership. Over to you, Manisha, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sushma. And you are so correct. Partnership is a huge part of any organizing strategy. And I feel that either building new partnerships or even rethinking old partnerships, both are part of strategizing and re-strategizing. And especially, post-pandemic, when we are paying more attention to being more inclusive, we're paying attention to diversity, and we want to reach more people, who we have not been able to reach. I think partnerships will play a very important part. There are two reasons for including partnership in your strategy. So one is that, partnership can optimize resources, both human and otherwise. So even competency wise, if one organization is good at one thing, if we find a complementary partner, we can always, augment our competencies. The second reason is from the point of view of organizational branding, because, we always say that we are known by the company we keep. And so who we partner with becomes a very important part of how we are recognized and known in the outside world and also among our peers. So for both these reasons, I think you just don't go out and just partner with anybody, but you do it very, very strategically. Srishti, can we move to next one, please? So when indulging in partnerships, I always remember Mikhail Gorbachev, the old Russian premier, because he always said that trust but verify. Because, ultimately when we say that we are partnering with this organization or that CSR foundation, ultimately the partnership is between people and people. So it is that people to people trust. If we can build that, then only the partnership would eventually work and becomes a long-term relationship. So I would advise everybody is that we need to have a clear strategy and vision about why we are partnering with this organization. And then before going any further, and I've talked about this often with Sushma and Ruchi, that these are absolute musts that you have to verify. So you have to make sure that your commitment is equal. You are going into it with a shared vision. It's not that, you are desiring a different outcome and your partner is desiring a different outcome. Transparency is very important. And also, discreetly checking out the past track record, not just of delivering, because a lot of organizations have the resources to deliver, but how good they are in respecting partnerships. So that track record also need to be checked, and their ethical conduct. Because I would go back again to the statement that you are known by the company you keep. And if your partner has ethical has engaged in ethical controversies, or when anybody searches them on social media, a lot of negative content comes up, it is bound to then reflect on you also. So I think when you strategize or re-strategize any project, whether in education or otherwise, these things have to be checked. And when we go back to Sushma, if we have time, she'll show you that how this actually happened when they designed Untitled. Okay, Srishti, can we move to the next one? Yeah. So I just want to make 3 points that when we re-strategize partnerships, let's pay attention to 3 things. So first, Srishti, one is that we should broaden our network of partners. So it's always very common for organizations that we feel comfortable with any one kind of organization or any one kind of partnership. But when you re-strategize, you make sure that you engage in multi-sector partnerships. Again, of course, you should have shared vision and goals. But if you are doing always government or corporate partnership, you can look at academic institutions, for example. A lot of organizations totally miss out academic institutions. And we have a very good example here that when CSRBOX and MICA, like CDMC MICA got together, it became a beautiful partnership. So always look for newer sectors. So if you are engaged in primary education, look for higher education institutions which can be of great help. So also many academic institutions now have special departments for community engaged research. They have a whole big student force. So, they can be very helpful. So this would be the first point if you haven't already looked at it. Srishti, second, please. This is the era of technology. This is the era of social media. And I've always observed that we don't make enough social use of social media, right? We only post information on social media, but the real beauty of digital media is to let us go beyond our geographic boundaries, and we can actually go global. So we should cast a wider network, reach out to global institutions, who are these days, they're so happy to have multi-country partnerships, regional partnerships. And also look out for not just always like US, Europe and Canada, but like so many other countries, say in South Asia, Southeast Asia, it's MENA countries. So broaden your vision, and you will see that there are so many new partnerships that are possible. Also embrace technology. And for that, just invest a little more on technology as well as talent, which can help you make the best use of this technology. In the final third point, Srishti, when you look for partners, don't always seek help or contribution in cash. Partners can help in so many different ways. Partner can help you with relationship, with other resources like competencies, skills, training, providing venue or providing their own networks, right? So don't always expect that the benefit will be in cash. Look for benefit in kind. And Sushma, again, when we talk about Nanodaya, I think the partnership you all created with, say, the Gram Panchayat, or the Sarpanch, government machinery, they didn't get you any money, but because of that partnership and the goodwill that the whole government system brought to this project, I think Nanodaya truly benefited a lot. So I think that is it, because we want to keep some time for questions and answers, but I just want to repeat that partnership should be a very important part of any organization's strategy. And also for NGO branding, And we at CDMC really care that, you know, NGOs, as Ruchi said, not just go with their passion, but also mix strategy with passion. So all our training program and courses are geared with that. We'll talk more about it later. So I think I will now hand it over back to Sushma. And then maybe we go for questions and answers. Sushma, you are muted.
Now, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So, you know, as Manisha rightly said, that partnerships are very important, and I'll talk a little bit more on partnerships for Gyanoday. For Gyanoday, three partners were there from very beginning. That is Godda District Administration, Adani Foundation, and Ecovation. Ecovation is the subject expert, Adani Foundation as a funding partner and also the implementation partner, and the wheel and the push from the district administration, because we all three had to agree and share the vision of what Gyanoday will do. But as strategized from very beginning, we got following partners or few more partners as we went on. Fourth one was a teachers, because we had to take them in confidence, and it was through them this was implemented. Gram Panchayat, because Gram Panchayat had to chip in with the fund to get schools ready, and also the SMC, school management committees, because many of the schools did not had even rooms which can be locked. Many of the schools lacked basic infrastructure. So SMC and Gram Panchayat put together, prepared a basic infrastructure, and one last piece that was added before students and parents was the Jharkhand Electricity Board, because we realized that as many as more than 50 schools had no electricity. So then we had to get them on board to get the transmission line and the electricity reaching to school. So yes, partnerships are very important. And, you know, even if one partner falters or shows little less enthusiasm, the entire projects can derail. So that is why keeping all of the partners on board with shared vision is must for success of any project. And if Ruchi and Manisha, both of you agree, we can take questions, and then we can discuss the topic further if need be.
Yeah, sure. So I've been monitoring the chat, and since I did not see a lot of activities, I do see somebody asking for the email ID or the contact number of ASDC, that Manisha, that is Sushma, as you posted. But apart from that, I don't see any question. If there are any questions, we'll be delighted to entertain those questions.
Or both of you may ask me questions and I can answer.
Sure. And Deepak has a very basic, important question here, that what is the difference between process and strategy?
Correct. Absolutely.
Do you want to answer that?
Sushma, would you want to answer that? Because I can definitely give you a broad theoretical input by just simply saying that process is a subset, an arm, and a tool to execute strategy. A strategy is a bigger set A strategy comprises of so much more than just processes. For example, a strategy comprises of your human resource. It comprises of all other resources that you have. It comprises of your vision, your mission. It comprises of several plans that you have in terms of your contingencies. So all of that together, and maybe if Sushma may want to supplement this with a sample from Gyanodaya, that will make it even more clear.
Yes.
And I would
Okay.
just add here, Sushma, before you give the example, that one of the key differences that processes can be spontaneous, but strategy is always planned. So that, I think, when we talk about strategy, it's a planned thing with a goal in mind. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Yes, Sushma, please.
Okay. So again, with Gyanodaya, I would explain that, the strategy that was for Jharkhand area, in Jharkhand, again in Godda, was that education level needed to be upgraded, uplifted in aspirational district. That is one of the parameters, and it needed to be changed for better positively. So that was the goal, that we would like it to be up from, say, last three to up, the first three. So that is the goal that is being set, and strategy is based on that goal. That, Godda cannot be in last three. Godda has to move in first three or first five. And strategy was built based on that, what were the issue that was in last three, and each issue was answered very strategic, and everyone shared the same vision that, the attendance needs to be improved, the dropout ratio has to go down, so that less number drop out, and large number completes their full education. Then again, picking out from those who are doing good, that, again mentoring the best students so that they perform well, right? So these were the strategies, and part of the strategy was to introduce smart class, artificial intelligence based programming. And then, as you rightly said, the process was changing in between, because we came across some of the roadblocks. So that, and I would say that because it was foresightedly strategized, that how smart class will be used, I would give you example that because of that experience in Godda, the entire content was then given to Jharkhand State School Board, and that was put across Doordarshan during the COVID situation. So what was started with just one district, or a few schools in one district, then it reached out to more school in one district, because it was earlier for 10th, 11th and 12th, then 8th and 9th grade were added. And then during the COVID situation, it reached out to entire state, and it was available free on YouTube. It was shown on Doordarshan, because we realized that, everyone may not have smart class, everyone may not have even mobile, but because that was be put on Doordarshan, where few students can reach out to another family and study together. And that is what is, I would say, that good strategy for reaching out to larger number, even in future or in case of such emergency. Any more questions, or if you would like to have more clarification on the case, then just let me know.
Sushma, there are more questions for you.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to intervene. I'm sorry, but I see there are many questions, and I would like to tell the participants and the speakers that they can interact in the networking lounge after the session. I mean, so you can exchange questions and your ideas after the session over there. Since we have another
Okay.
session at 3:30 already planned.
We so
Okay.
appreciate, and most importantly, I have left behind MICA CDMC's link to the website. Please post your questions there. We will definitely be able to respond to it. We completely appreciate the limitations that we have, but time is definitely a paucity, and we respect Team CSR Box's command.
Yeah, I would like to thank all the three of you for such an engaging session, and Srushti for handling the technical aspect so beautifully. And I think the session was perfectly planned. I mean, starting from the theory and importance of strategizing and partnerships, moving on to Ms. Sushma sharing the actual application of this theory. So I think the session was very fruitful and engaging for all of us. I would like to thank you again for joining us and the participants for the active participation.